This is episode 428 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I'm very pleased to be joined this week by Jeremy Gay. He is running as a Republican for Attorney General of the state of New Mexico. Welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico, Jeremy.
Hey, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on, and thanks for taking on the task of running for Attorney General in the state of New Mexico. I know of only one other Attorney General on the Republican side in this state for my lifetime, and perhaps that of other people out there. Hal Stratton, who was coincidentally one of the co-founders of the Rio Grande Foundation. So you're looking to follow in some big footsteps there.
Yes, sir. I've met with Hal. He's still doing well.
Yeah, great guy, and somebody who's done a lot for free markets and freedom in general in New Mexico. But we're going to talk about your race for Attorney General, what Attorney Generals do here in New Mexico, and some of the positions that you have taken or will take that might be contrary to folks like Hector Balderas, who is not running for re-election. He's term limited out, but your opponent, contrasting with him and the way things have been done maybe in the past in this office. But just to get it out of the way, what does an attorney general do in New Mexico? What are their primary responsibilities?
That's a question I've been getting a lot from family, friends, from people I meet. I was at a parade recently and I was asked as I was walking by, so I had to give a 3-second explanation. So the 3-second explanation is the Attorney General is the top law enforcement officer. It's the attorney that represents the state of New Mexico, the people of New Mexico, the legislators of New Mexico, to keep them honest and to keep New Mexico a safe and competitive place. That's what it does on paper. It guards the Constitution of New Mexico and helps legislators and the people have a safe environment for them to conduct their businesses and interact with other states, interact with the federal government, and make sure that the rules are being followed and being applied equally.
Now, you talk about chief law enforcement officer, and that's something that's of great concern to New Mexicans currently, especially here in the Albuquerque metro area with crime running rampant. Now we have a series of some kind of crimes. We've had 3 Muslim men attacked and killed. There's a 4th that apparently was attacked but survived. And there's a lot of crime issues in our city as well as the state of New Mexico. What does the Attorney General do in that kind of basic law enforcement? And what maybe is beyond the scope of that role? Because it is important that people know that you do have limitations. You have judges, you have police officers, you have the legislature, a governor, all those kinds of things. Those people have a role to play. But what can the Attorney General do, and what can he or she not do?
So it's a great question, Paul. We get that a lot because the Attorney General office is it's not a very well-known office, unfortunately, for all the good it can do. But those who do understand the strength of the Attorney General's office and how it can move that needle on the crime issue see that it is a unique situation. So let's start here. The Attorney General's office has the ability to prosecute complex crimes. It has concurrent jurisdiction across the entire state of New Mexico. That being said, there's obviously DA's offices throughout the state of New Mexico, and so it works in tandem with law enforcement and the prosecution offices across the state. Commonly, the Attorney General's office will take complex crimes, whether it be white-collar crimes. There's a border violence department as well. We have the AG's office is uniquely situated to be an overarching jurisdiction for pursuing complex crimes that span multiple counties and even multiple states. And whether that be fraudulent activity on a national scale that's affecting New Mexicans from corporations or sordid individuals who are looking to take advantage of the weakest among us, or if those are local homegrown talent that are engaging in criminal acts and conspiracies that are affecting New Mexicans across the state or even isolated in one county. And so one of the unique factors of the Attorney General's office is that it's an independent elected position in the executive. It's able to prioritize what the people need most. And so if there's a exceptionally high, fraud coming from a certain industry, the AG's office is uniquely situated to work with all the different counties and the DA's offices to take those cases on and have a more coherent approach to piece together these parts to see the whole picture. And so specifically with crime, and we see that, you hit the nail on the head. We see in Albuquerque, but we're seeing across this entire state with fentanyl, with increasing cartel activities, and specifically in Albuquerque. Albuquerque's getting New Mexico on the map for all the wrong reasons as far as the national crime policy and debates, and people are looking at Albuquerque for how the violent crimes have spiked, and those New Mexicans who live in Albuquerque and around Albuquerque, I feel like every New Mexican passes through Albuquerque to fly out of the state or to arrive. They're seeing a marked transformation in the city to what's many have, I think, very accurately depicted as lawlessness is where we're headed.
Now, one of the things that we've seen in Albuquerque, and these are just spitballing issues around crime. One was the city at one time had an ordinance against panhandling in the middle of an intersection. You see around Albuquerque people virtually every major street corner, sometimes multiple corners within that street corner, asking for money. Apparently, the ACLU filed a suit, and that was overturned, that policy. So now the quote unquote homeless or whoever it is have free reign in these intersections. One could simply imagine that this is a problem of right of way and safety. We have large numbers of traffic fatalities among pedestrians in the city and the state. Is there any role for the Attorney General in that kind of issue, or is this between the city and the ACLU?
Well, what's unique about the AG's office is that it has the resources to investigate and produce policy opinions and the fruit of the research they found, and go to the legislator, go to local rule makers and rule enforcers, and show there are ways of addressing these issues that have been successful in other jurisdictions. There's ways of addressing these issues that have been successful throughout New Mexico. And oftentimes policies that are, I think, very well intended and are focused on compassion can cause much more harm to those very groups they're looking to protect. You hit the nail on the head when you were mentioning pedestrians panhandling. If you were to have legislation, or you can have rules on the books, which we do, against panhandling and against jaywalking and all of those things, and you stop enforcing them because you feel as though they're targeting a certain demographic or homeless or this certain area, and you think that it's unfair to that group, so you stop enforcing them. Well, all these laws exist for a reason. They're not just to protect those of us who are driving on the road, but they're also to protect those who are trying to panhandle on the road or jaywalk or whatever you have, what have you there. And we're seeing the results gradually of no longer enforcing the laws we have on the books, especially the misdemeanor. So back to the AG's office, it's been something that I've been researching and I'm passionate about, whether it be the homeless encampments or just misdemeanor crimes in general. But this logic that if we ignore those smaller crimes, those petty misdemeanors, that we can focus on these more serious crimes, that's not how societies and cities have worked traditionally, and we see why, because it's the little things that lead to the big things. And virtually every community that has actually turned around negative trends as to crime, it's been really taking seriously, cracking down on misdemeanor crimes, but more than that, really preserving the law and showing that lawlessness cannot be the rule if we want to live in a society that's governed by laws.
Now, your opponent has been the DA here in Bernalillo County, which is kind of the epicenter for a lot of that crime. Is there something that the Attorney General can specifically do to really put a stop to crime or enforce it better? And we're going to talk about the economic aspects of the AG's office, but from a crime enforcement perspective, it actually seems to the outsider like myself that it's much more of judges and police officers working sometimes at odds, sometimes in tandem, but it's not as much the attorney general's role. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that seems to be there seems to be limited ability for the attorney general to really fight a lot of that crime outside of maybe keeping some bad guys in jail.
Sure. Like any elected position, the attorney general's office, their day-to-day hands-on crime fighting looks different. And from the top down, from a top-down leadership perspective, it's uniquely situated to actually turn these trends. And so, one, the AG's office has concurrent jurisdiction. So, as Attorney General, the Attorney General's office will take conflict cases. If a DA's office is unable to prosecute a case because of an internal conflict or lacks the resources to pursue it, it allows the AG's office to work in tandem with DA's offices to say, these seem to be cases that you're not taking for whatever reason, whether it be your internal policy or your shortness of staff or because there's a conflict. In certain areas, I would strategically deploy the AG's office's resources to face these crises. So even if the AG's office typically stays on the bench unless it's a complex crime, a white-collar crime, those complex conspiracies. But I see a desperate need for the AG's office to be more invested even in the prosecution of simple misdemeanors in areas in which they've been ignored, because the people of New Mexico are all suffering because of that, and the AG's office, having concurrent jurisdiction, can work with law enforcement, work with those DA's office to take those cases that they're just not taking.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Now, I want to give you an opportunity to say, given that record that your opponent has, do you think that you would do things differently? Are there policy differences there? Obviously, he's running as a Democrat who was elected to office locally, so he has a track record there. Is it applicable to this new office for both of you?
So, to address, there's multiple parts to that question. Was the original question, or was part of the question, my opinion on his track record?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
That's simple. Yeah.
Yep. Sure. There's statistics. Obviously, the statistics tell a story. There's been a marked increase in crime and a decrease in convictions since he's been the DA. I think that there's certain things that he's implemented, leveraging technology, that I think that have been very successful. But he is the best funded DA's office in the state, and it's not performing. So as a leader, you can. I believe in extreme ownership. And so if you're in that position, you have to own the fact that the efforts that you are taking, the policies you're implementing, aren't effective. They aren't effective at actually turning this tide. And I think one of the oversights that was made, this little bit of insider knowledge on the DA's office and how it operates, is it's been very selective in cherry picking the cases it's willing to prosecute. And that's why you see the decline in prosecution rate and decline in conviction, because the DA's wanted to take cases that are almost 100% certainty of success, and that's not always fair to the victim. That's not always fair to the officers who put their lives on the line to collect this evidence. And you can have very strong cases. I'm a litigator. I've prosecuted. I've done defense work. I understand that every case is not a complete winner, but sometimes you've got evidence. You have enough evidence to meet your burden beyond a reasonable doubt. And even if it's going to negatively affect your personal record for prosecution rate, you owe it to the victims, you owe it to the families to pursue it. That's one element. The other element is turning a blind eye to misdemeanors. Turning a blind eye to misdemeanors, and that not being more of an issue that's been championed by the DA's office to say, hey, we cannot just focus on violent felonies, because we're seeing the trends of focus primarily on high-profile violent felonies that might look good for press releases, but you're ignoring, no one opens their door and starts their day, has their first criminal offense is a felony. It happens on occasion, usually crimes of passion, but the type of criminal activity we're seeing from career criminals, those are misdemeanor after misdemeanor after misdemeanor until that first felony. And when you're caught and released, or your case isn't pursued, or your case is dismissed, or The DA's office is disqualifying the officer and for past conduct and not pursuing the case. Well, you've now just taught this individual that there aren't consequences to their actions, and so they're going to get more and more and more brazen until they're just having gunfights in the street and civilians are getting hit in the crossfire. And so, to me, that's one oversight that wasn't really taken into account. Just human nature and criminology. You can't close your eyes to misdemeanors. It is truly a gateway and the proving ground for the future felons.
Excellent. That's a really good point about prosecuting some of those other crimes, and something that a lot of blue states and blue cities seem to have gotten away from. But I'm going to move out of the crime area into what I think people underestimate is the role of the AG and the AG's office in economic matters. And I'm going to throw out a couple of things. One is I wrote a blog post back in July of 2021, and there was a case involving our current Attorney General and his suit against a medical product sterilization firm. The gist of it is that this company operates in southern New Mexico and Santa Teresa and has done so since 1989, sterilizing things that are used in the medical profession. And Balderas went after them, and in a way that is, if it's enforced, going to be detrimental, impossible for them to do business. There's things like joining a lawsuit out in California that Balderas has done with a moratorium on natural gas hookups in new housing. He's engaged in all kinds of public policy battles. The Holtec nuclear facility in southeast New Mexico that's desperately desired by local that are local in nature, and there's legal action on that. But and he's opposed this facility that's going to create jobs and economic growth in Carlsbad, Hobbs, etc. So, what's your philosophy, broadly speaking, on the Attorney General's office getting involved in these kinds of bigger issues? Because there's virtue signaling, then there's real policy. It's very complicated.
Yep. Well, I mean, you hit on something that's, I think the everyday voter doesn't really think too much about. You wouldn't think at first blush that the Attorney General, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, would have such a big, the potential of such a big impact on New Mexico's economy. But it is New Mexico's attorney who's interacting with other entities, other businesses, other industries. And so when making decisions on who to sue, on how to arrive at settlements, on how to negotiate a resolution, because let's say an industry's doing something wrong and it's affecting multiple states, but affecting New Mexico. Well, if I'm in that position, I'm going to approach that industry and see their history with New Mexico, how they're serving New Mexico, what the people of New Mexico want to do in those actual communities. I'm not going to follow talking points or policy positions that are just coming out of D.C. that, as you alluded to, are more of virtue signaling than they are actually advocating for what New Mexicans need and what New Mexicans want. We've seen that the AG's office historically has been a pulpit to carry party policies and party politics. And what I'm excited about this office is it doesn't have to function that way, and it shouldn't function that way. As Chief Law Enforcement Officer, the law is neutral regardless of your party. And on policy positions with different industries, I would view them on a case-by-case basis and really talk to those regions and find out how it's helping them and how it's hurting them, and how to come up with a resolution that serves New Mexico, not any particular law firms I'm affiliated with or national party sentiments and talking points.
Yeah, and it's like being a Supreme Court justice in the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, you have a philosophy in which you are going to apply what you are, what your vision is of good law enforcement, but you also have to focus on New Mexicans, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems like, and we could argue, I could do a litany of things that we've disagreed with the current occupant of that office, and just the idea of natural gas hookups in homes and private businesses, that is a policy implemented in California, by the way, that New Mexicans, a big oil and natural gas producing state, should be involved in it seems pretty far-fetched. But on the flip side, without the work of attorney generals across the country, the Biden vaccine mandates, that was something that the courageous efforts of these state AGs, mostly, conservative. It's not always red states that elect Republican AGs and vice versa, but talk about some of those kinds of things. And I know we can't look into the crystal ball of the future, but maybe there are issues out there on the horizon you think your office might deal with as Attorney General. Are there any of those out there?
Well, I'd say this. First, you brought up the Supreme Court justices, right? Not the most popular time in the United States to be a Supreme Court justice. I don't think there's ever been a time in which Americans on both sides of the spectrum politically, there's been a lot of faith lost in institutions. As far as my philosophy with this particular office is, and this is kind of sound a little radical, but I approach it with the mindset that the funds that the AG's office has are the funds of the people of New Mexico, and the resources that the AG's office has are the resources of the people of New Mexico, and the power it wields is the power of the people of New Mexico, and that our policies should be based on the people of this state, not what's happening in California, not what's happening in D.C. Or any other state and their needs. We have very unique communities here. We have very unique needs, and our policies need to fit that. And so, as much as I'm conservative, my philosophy with government is that we have these resources that the people of the state give us to provide a safe community for businesses to thrive and individuals to thrive, and then get out of the way. The AG's office should not be there lecturing you on fringe or wedge issues that are extremely political in nature, when their job is to make sure that the laws are enforced and enforced equally, and make sure that this is a competitive environment for New Mexicans to thrive and thrive in a safe and healthy way. So as far as issues coming down the pipeline, what I would bring to the table, what I pledge to bring to the table, is to make the AG's office of New Mexico less of a political mouthpiece and more of doing its job. I think that one of the things that has harmed New Mexico, and part of the reason that we're listed where we're ranked on all the lists, and we all hear it all the time, we're bottom of the list of many, many good things and top of the list of many, many bad things. And I think it's because some of our elected officials have neglected to execute the mission of the office that they were elected into. And so as Attorney General, my focus will be completely based on what New Mexico needs to thrive, and not what the hot button issue politically is, where it might have nothing to do. And we've seen that right now. I mean, we're suffering tremendously in this state with this crime epidemic, with fentanyl on the streets, economically, and we're having business after business. I know we said we'd hop off crime, but right now crime is so intimately connected to our economy in New Mexico. We have large businesses who are attempting to open much needed services within the state. And when every other metric lines up and they want to come here and they want to set up, but that final metric is crime. The crime tax here is way too high. And when I say crime tax, I'm talking about the cost of doing business in New Mexico, with having your stores broken into, having copper stripped from your buildings, having your employees not feel safe going in and out of the workplace, having your merchandise stolen. That's the cost that's preventing investing into this state. So to me, there are obviously a lot of hot button issues right now bubbling across this nation, and many times, unfortunately, I think they're distractions. I think that there are some very urgent priorities that need to be focused on in this state, and that's crime. We have to reduce crime. We have to make ourselves harder targets so that our law-abiding citizens can thrive, and cartel and organized crime, whether it's coming from south of the border or even within the United States, who are coming here to set up shop because business is going so well here, and there's a criminal economy boom in New Mexico and in Albuquerque. We have to turn that tide, and until we elect individuals who are willing to actually execute the mission of the offices they're elected into, we're never going to move the needle in the right direction.
All right. Now, One of the interesting things about our current Attorney General is that he has accepted people working in his office whose salaries are paid for by people like former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, one of the richest men around in the United States, who has been paying the salary, at least at one point. I don't know if it's still happening, but paying for attorneys to go to work for Hector Balderas. They've also used a lot of outside hired counsel, not internal resources to the Attorney General's office. So they're using our tax dollars to pay for legal representation outside of the AG's office. Sometimes this is done for legitimate reasons if you are dealing with arcane areas of law or some kind of scientific questions, but it's kind of a practice that seems to have grown out of control. Now, obviously, you're not running against the current Attorney General, but I assume these are points that you're going to discuss and bring up in the campaign, and we don't know, I haven't seen statements from your opponent as to what if he will do things differently, but what will you do in those areas? Are you going to have the Koch brothers funding Attorney General, people working in your Attorney General's office?
So no, so it's a complex question, right? Because on the outside, New Mexico, I think rightly so, is suspicious of outside money coming into the state. Typically, when money comes in, it's not even from these. I think that Wikipedia would refer to them as philanthropists, but there's oftentimes strings attached to that money. And so, when you're hiring out-of-state counsels, you have to decide and determine, is this necessary? So, to your point, the legal world can get extremely nuanced, and when you don't have subject matter experts within the state, you need to leverage the resources that you do have to bring people in who can do the job. That being said, I think that like any muscle, if you neglect that group and you're constantly outsourcing that, you're going to get weaker and weaker and atrophy more and more. That we have a robust legal community within New Mexico. We have a robust legal community within Albuquerque, and I would sooner partner with state talent that's here to foster that talent and grow that talent for many of these cases, instead of taking the path of least resistance, which is this hire a premier firm from another area. Similarly, the AG's office and DA's offices within the state of New Mexico have a incredible opportunity to recruit and cultivate young professionals who want to make this their home and learn this jurisdiction and stay here. Like many people who come and work here, they fall in love with it, and they fall in love with the food and the people, and they don't want to leave. And so the more and more we can attract good, hardworking professionals who want to make New Mexico a better place, rather than attorneys, from New York or from DC who are coming in to get in and out and take that money with them and take that experience with them. I'm all about growing our homegrown talent here in New Mexico whenever applicable, and even when we have to bring in outside counsel, let's have them work hand in hand with our talent, so our talent can work on getting to the level that when that case comes or familiar fact pattern comes, we can handle it on our own with our own resources, and we keep that institutional knowledge within the state.
Now, it would seem like that would be an occasional thing to do, is to use outside attorneys. But I, quite frankly, personally, and I think a lot of folks would have a fundamental problem with people who are funded by billionaires with an ideological axe to grind, that they are funding people working in government offices. Is that? I mean, I want to pin you down a little bit here.
Oh no,
you
for sure.
Are you opposed to that?
So there's, I mean, you look at this. So everyone knows, many people know. I shouldn't say everyone, but most people have heard of George Soros, for example.
Right.
George Soros very famously funds progressive DAs across the nation, and his logic in that, as it's been borne out, is that there's certain laws he doesn't agree with, and there's certain society he wants to see come about, and so he works to get individuals elected who share that philosophy. And you see that these progressive DAs are the DAs who are in LA and San Francisco, in Chicago, New York, these areas that have these explosions in crime. And if you watch that trajectory, I mean, Raul Torres has received sizable campaign contributions in his DA race from George Soros. And so, to your point, when you have these large donors, you can't always control who your donors are, but if you have a six-figure donation from someone, it typically doesn't just fall out of the sky. At least that has not been my experience. There are strings attached, and so I think that the voter, and that's why we have the campaign finance laws that we have. There has to be that transparency. Who's funding this and why is the question. Why are they putting this type of money behind an individual? So as much as that you have these different groups and these different parties who are pushing these agendas, I think it's very, very important for elected officials to be to have no strings attached. That's one unique things that I bring to the table. I mean, one of the issues with politics is as people fund you and support you, it becomes a quid pro quo that can really get out of control. And you have to have an attorney general who is above that and who's not, who doesn't have his hands tied against certain areas and is not encouraged to pursue others just based on philosophical bents instead of applying the law and applying the law equally and fairly.
But I just want to be 100% clear that there's a difference between somebody who supports an individual in a campaign versus Bloomberg having people in the office of the Attorney General working on a day-to-day basis. And presumably they would be working for the AG himself or herself as an elected official under that office. But certainly the Bloomberg money is going to have a, what do they say about working for two masters, that kind of thing.
Yes.
It would seem that would be a problem philosophically. That's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, no, got it. You're spot on, and I agree with you on that, where saying the Marine Corps appearances are reality. If you, to your point, where your bread is buttered, if you're getting paid by an individual and you're operating inside this office, are you loyal to the office and the mission of the office? Or are you loyal to the person cutting your paycheck? And also, I think that the people of New Mexico should have a say and some oversight in that, because now we have, which unfortunately can be political operatives on the payroll of someone who clearly has an agenda, who's now working towards that agenda instead of the mission of the office of the Attorney General of the state of New Mexico. So to your point, no, if someone said, hey, I've got an attorney who wants to work for you, I'll pay them, but they'll help you accomplish AG work within the office. On paper, it's like, oh, we'll save some of our budget. But in practice, you have the appearance of a complete conflict and the actuality of someone who's not necessarily loyal to the AG's office or the people of New Mexico, but instead they can only serve but one master, as you alluded to before.
Got it. Okay. I was trying to get down into that particular issue. So anything that you want to talk about, broadly speaking, that we haven't discussed so far as we get into the last few minutes of this episode? I want to make sure because the AG is such a unique and interesting office, and I know you said earlier that it doesn't always get as much publicity, but and I'm not saying that you're in this boat, but AG is often jokingly referred to as aspiring governor. And you got a ways to go before you get there. But AG in a lot of states is a very, very top level position within any given administration. But just describe the importance of your background,
Sure.
your role, et cetera. Anything else you want to get out there that we haven't talked about?
So I get that question on occasion. Sometimes it's from someone stern with their arms crossed. Sometimes it was someone very, very eager, hoping that I continue on this journey past the AG's office because they're not particularly enamored with the AG's office and want me to do something more exciting. And one story that always stuck out to me, one of my experiences when I went through OCS as a Marine officer, as my ascension to get my commission, there's a young man, and we all lined up, and my platoon started with 64. We graduated with about 32, and that gentleman, we all went down and they asked, well, why do you want to be a Marine Corps officer? And it's a hard question to ask, and everyone's kind of thinking, well, what's the real reason? Why am I here? I want to serve my nation. I want to lead Marines. And the gentleman who got called on, I will never forget his response. He said, I want to become a Marine Corps officer because it'll look fabulous on my resume, and if I aspire to getting good jobs, and it'll open a lot of doors with networking, and it'll really set me up for success. And everyone in the platoon sighed a universal sigh of disappointment, and there were some chuckles at the absurdity of that. And so for me, I'm running for Attorney General, and I want to be the Attorney General of the state of New Mexico to serve the people of New Mexico. And I see this office as such a unique office, so situated to be responsive to the needs of today, right now. And so to the point of the AG's office itself, and I've talked to AGs from different states, and I talked to Hal Stratton about being AG of the state of New Mexico. And one of the things that's so unique about it is the AG's office has the flexibility, and that's, I think, why it's not appointed. Instead, it's independently elected. It has the flexibility to focus these resources and the personnel of the office on the issues that are most pressing, that are needed today. And I believe that I'm an attorney general who can adapt and overcome the adversity that we're facing, and to have a laser focus on what the people of New Mexico need today, not 20 years from now, not 20 years ago, but actually today.
And while we didn't do a lot of biography at the beginning, I'll give you a chance to. You were a Marine. What was it, captain? You said?
Yep, I'm a Marine Corps captain. Just got selected a pin-on major. I'm in the reserves right now.
Okay, and you're from Gallup, New Mexico.
Gallup, New Mexico.
So you're not from. To a lot of folks, it's important. There's a Albuquerque versus the world, or vice versa.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of philosophy out there. But you're not an Albuquerque area individual, but you are a practicing attorney in the state of New Mexico.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And what kind of law, what kind of things have you done in your legal career?
Sure.
To prepare you for this?
So as a Marine, as a judge advocate, for those of you who don't know what a judge advocate is, it's very similar to the Navy JAG, like in the movie A Few Good Men. It was just like that every day. That courtroom scene was my main experience.
You're Jack Nicholson, right?
Exactly. Well, no. Yeah. Tom Cruise on that one. Technically, I'd be Kevin Bacon, but I'll identify as Tom Cruise. Kevin Bacon in that movie was a Marine Corps judge advocate. And so as a Marine Corps judge advocate, I prosecuted and defended felony and misdemeanor crimes. I also ran a legal assistance office, which very uniquely prepared me for the Attorney General's office, because running a legal assistance office, you're dealing with every type of fraud, consumer abuse issue. You're dealing with the children of active duty and veterans. You're dealing with widows of veterans, and they're coming to you with anything from, hey, I need to get a divorce, to, hey, I adopted a child and there's all kinds of things we didn't know about, to someone stole my credit card. And so we're trained federally and trained locally in that state to make our clients hard targets and help them recover when they've been the victim of criminal activity or victim of civil misconduct. And through that experience, I had an opportunity to help thousands and thousands of individuals, and it was extremely rewarding. And so I also have the experience in prosecuting. I was a special assistant United States attorney in San Bernardino County and over outside 29 Palms. And so we'd be traveling down to LA. We'd be prosecuting civilians who committed criminal activities on the military installation. And so those were and then the other part is just leadership. There's no, any elected official, but especially the Attorney General, you have to be able to lead. And the Attorney General, more now than ever before, needs a leader, not an activist. And as a leader, you're able to see past people's religious, faith, race backgrounds, to see them as an individual and employ them to accomplish the mission. And so one thing that I've picked up as a Marine and as a father of 6 is that you need to focus on what needs to get done. You have to have a plan, and you have to get after it. And so those are the experiences. And now owning a law firm out in Gallup, New Mexico, same thing. I mean, I've worked with the wealthiest business owners to those who have nothing at all, through pro bono work, through contracts with my city, and through people coming in and hiring me. And so from assisting businesses to helping people who've run afoul are in a bad situation, family-wise or otherwise, it's been extremely rewarding being able to help every segment of society recover from the situation that they're in and get their life back on track.
All right. Well, how do people find out more about your campaign and contribute to it, et cetera?
Yeah. You can check me out at jeremygay.com. You're going to have all the links there to our social media and otherwise. You can sign up there for more information, figure out where we're headed to if you want to support. I mean, we have a massive movement right now across the nation, but across New Mexico, New Mexicans are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they want leaders who will do the jobs they're being hired or elected to do. And so, jeremygay.com, you'll find our social media. If you got the means, please support. If you've got the time, please donate your time. We're making New Mexico a safer place. We're doing this for our kids. We're doing this for our businesses because New Mexico is worth fighting for. So join the fight, jeremygay.com.
All right. And just for the record, we have reached out to Raul Torres, Jeremy's opponent. If he agrees to come on, we will love to have him. And that goes for any candidate out there for any office that we've talked to, including Governor Lujan Grisham. I'd love nothing more in this world to sit down with her, as I've sat down with Mark Ronchetti and the other Republicans running in that primary as Republicans, and then, of course, Ronchetti being the general election candidate. So good luck out there, Jeremy, and we'll maybe have a conversation someday about your actual work as Attorney General of New Mexico. But until then, thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to this show at Apple, Stitcher, or have your Google Home play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.
Thanks, Paul.